Hello everyone, Donnie from GTG Coaching here. Today we are going to talk about feet. What to do with them, why they're important, what can happen when we don't use them as well as we might in, for instance, a squat. Now, disclaimer time, this video is going to involve some up close and personal shots of my feet. Now I realise feet aren't exactly everyone's thing. Jenny, what do you think about feet? But then again, some people love feet. That's cool. If that's your thing, maybe drop me a DM. I was thinking about starting an OnlyFans page anyway. So I do have a bit of a Frodo Baggins vibe going on. So much so that before a holiday a couple of years ago, the girlfriend was starting to get a little bit concerned and actually booked me in to go and see a lady to have a pedicure. Poor woman. Fairly sure she was Polish. It was a Friday night, 6 p.m, and I'm pretty certain I was the last person that she was seeing that week, and all that she wanted to do was just go home. So I sit down in the chair and she pulls her mask up and kind of crouches down to have a closer look. And as she looked up, she said to me, "There is only so much I can do." As she was saying this, she was firing up what looked like an industrial strength metal grinder. So anyway, slightly awkward tangent over. Let's talk about feet and the role that they play in our movement today, the squat. Now it's a lot more complicated than this, and quite often when you ask a question, you may well get the response, "It depends." But let's just say, for instance, for today's video, we're talking about a stacked joint is a happy joint. Can you scroll down? Now, it's quite often a lot more complicated than this, and quite often when you do ask a GTG coach a question, you will possibly get the response, "It depends." But let's just say for this video, we're going to work under the premise that a stacked joint is a happy joint. And when we're talking about squatting, one way you can talk about it, one way you can describe it, is that it is simultaneous flexion of the hips, knees and ankles, followed by simultaneous extension of the ankles, knees and hips. So what we're looking for in a squat is we're looking for those joints to be moving in harmony. They're connected so that a problem in one of them usually causes a problem further up the stream or maybe even downstream. So let's talk about the knee for a second. Okay, so we've got your patella, also known as your kneecap, and your femur, also known as your thigh bone. When we squat, we want your kneecap to track up a groove in your thigh bone called the patellofemoral groove. It's a little bit like a train on the tracks. We want to keep the train from derailing. A common reason people can develop pain in their knees is they lose the ability to control the rotation in their knee, so their train is jumping off their tracks. Often it looks like this. Now, what does this have to do with your foot and your ankle? Well, if you remember what we said at the start of the video, when we said we want to look for your foot and your ankle, your knee and your hip all moving in sequence and in harmony. The foot provides the platform for all of this to happen. A stable foot provides a stable foundation for the rest of the body to move. Sorry, down again. So let's look at that knee collapse video again. Have a look at my foot. How stable does it look? Now, this might not be because of your foot, but it's a good place to start. Look at the foundation that you're building. It's a little bit like if you're building a block of flats, you wouldn't start working on the penthouse before you put in the foundations. Sorry, down again. When your knee drops in the way, this is also called valgus. So the furthest away bone, in this case your shin bone, is now sitting at an outward angle, which is probably going to be knocking that kneecap out of its groove. Looking more closely at the foot, do you see how it's rolling in the way? Okay, so that's called pronation. As I pronate, I'm losing my foot's natural arch, my foot's natural stability, and it's going to probably cause problems further upstream. So remember, ankle, knee and hip working together. Okay, so we're now going to have a slightly possibly redundant demonstration of what happens when you have an unstable platform. So this first formula is your ankle, next one's your knee, and this top one's your hip. So remember we said we want these three things to be moving simultaneously and in harmony. So now we know that the position of our foot and our ankle is going to affect how our knees and our hips move. With the foot, we want to try and find and maintain that neutral arch position. We would like to find and hold a stable neutral arch. How are we going to get that? We call it rooting. And it can be a really, really helpful coaching cue, but we need to remember why we're doing it in the first place. Okay, so usually when we're teaching or coaching rooting, we would actually start with your feet and get you thinking about your feet. But just for fun, let's try this. Actually, we're talking about upstream, downstream. Let's start upstream and start off with your butt, okay? So I just want you standing just in a kind of neutral position. Try this out and see what you think. Right, so I want you to imagine that you're squeezing your butt cheeks as hard as you can, as if you're trying to crush a walnut. So it looks a little bit like this. Okay, did you feel your butt? Cool, all right. What I want to do is I want to do exactly the same thing again, but this time I want you to shift your awareness from your butt to your feet. So same thing, roughly a squat stance, and then squeeze your glutes, squeeze your butt cheeks as hard as you can. What do you feel happening down at your feet? Hopefully what you feel is the arch of your foot lifting up as you squeeze your butt. So now, hopefully after trying that, you see how engaging or moving one area of your body is going to affect another area of your body. Okay, so when we are coaching people to root their feet, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get them to find that neutral, lifted, active arch and trying to find something we call a tripod foot. So back to the feet, let's take a closer look. When we're coaching you to root your feet, we're trying to get you to find something we call a tripod foot. Okay, close up on the feet. Thank you, Gavin. All right, so we're looking at just underneath the first toe, just underneath the fifth toe, or sixth toe if it's Rory, and then on the heel. Probably can't use that, right? So if we're trying to maintain that neutral arch in the foot to provide us with a stable knee position and knee movement, we want consistent pressure on each of those three spots. Holding that position provides stability and helps us transfer power. It's a solid foundation for our squat. And as I was saying, at G2G, we'll coach that by getting people to do that rooting movement that we talk about. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so one way I might teach or coach somebody to feel what it's like to get that tripod position, that rooting sensation through the feet, is I actually get them to stand on a mat in a squat stance, and then I want them to imagine that they're trying to rip this mat right down the middle, a little bit like this. Just coming in and out of that position. So that's how we would look at maybe coaching rooting. Okay, so when does that become a problem? When we take it too far. So we're talking about somebody rooting their feet and we're trying to find that neutral arch. So we're trying to get out of that collapsed in position, that pronated position, and find the neutral position. Sometimes if somebody takes that cue too far, what can happen is they actually go beyond the neutral position and end up in collapsing out the way, also known as supination. And it looks a little bit like this. So if I was going to root my feet, remember we're trying to hold 3 points of contact, tripod position, and if I take that too far, like if I literally try and rip these floor parts, do you see what's happening? See how this little bit, the bit under my foot that we said we wanted to keep contact on, my big toe and even my heel are starting to creep out of the way. So that's now actually, even though we're trying to root our feet, thinking we're creating a nice stable platform, we've taken it too far and we've lost that neutral arch that we're trying to maintain, that active arch. So to provide a little bit of context, one cue you might hear is when you're squatting, you want knees out. It's not necessarily wrong, but what I would add to that is knees out whilst maintaining that tripod in your foot. So to summarize, we want our feet and ankles, our knees and our hips to stay stacked. Remember, stack joint, happy joint. And we want to try and make sure that they're moving in harmony together. The foot, a properly rooted foot, a tripod position through the foot, provides a really solid foundation. And if it is collapsing, then it's quite possible it'll cause problems upstream, knees and hips. And just remember, we stop that foot collapsing by finding that tripod foot. So hopefully today's video has perhaps cleared up some misconceptions about rooting your feet and what to do with your feet during a squat. And next time you're doing a squat, maybe video or get a coach or a training partner to have a look and watch for that telltale sign of the knees collapse in. And just remember, one place you can look to try and correct that is what's going on with the feet.